All right, I just gonna I want to revisit some ideas of consequentialism or utilitarianism, and I just want to revisit um, pretty briefly um, the utilitarianism of J.S. Mill and a little bit of Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy Bentham is a writer that I've read a lot less of, um, but there's a big difference between the two, Mill and Bentham. Utilitarianism is a theory of normative ethics saying that we should act based upon this principle of utility. Um, it's also phrased as the greatest happiness principle. Um, the greatest happiness principle, or the principle of utility, is saying that we need to act and do the things that create the greatest happiness for the largest amount of people without harming anyone. That's a loaded way of saying it, but it's pretty much we need to act upon things that lead to the greatest happiness um, among the most amount of people. And what comes in later is this thing that it's like a little bit of a restriction, which is a good restriction, saying that you shouldn't do something that pleases you if it causes harm to others, and that can range among a lot of things like um, you know let's say you want to kill yourself for one. That's a big example. Um, if people love you and you have a lot of friends and family and people surrounded who are surrounding you, you killing yourself would be harm to others, and that is the case for most. Most of us have family and friends who do love us, and killing oneself, a suicide is always harmful. Yeah, it's pretty much always harmful. I'm just not taking into account the few people that have no one. Um, so that's pretty much what it's about. We need to act. It's saying we need to act upon something because of something that it's pretty much an act that is instrumental. Um, that's I am not a utilitarianism. I'm not a consequentialism. I don't believe in utilitarianism. I believe in virtue ethics. Um, but I want to revisit it and kind of look at it and see what really good things are here. Um, Now I have various videos on consequentialism already. I have one on um, act and rule utilitarianism that I made a long time ago, and that's all on my ethics playlist. And I have the consequentialism and the deontology and the virtue and the not the virtue the consequentialism and the deontology videos numbered and entitled with those titles to know what they are. Okay, and another big thing here. There's qualitative pleasures and there's quantitative pleasures. Let's talk a little bit about Bentham. Bentham said that pleasures are only quantitative, and by that what is meant is that we should judge pleasures by how much there are and how many we can get, and there is no qualitative high and low pleasures. All the pleasures are the same, and it's only a matter about the quantity, how much we can get. And that I disagree with entirely. If I was a utilitarian consequentialism, I would disagree with that. I would never like that ever, because there are various grades of pleasures, same way as there is of pain. Um, and what Mill says is that we should go for a higher pleasure. Go for a higher pleasure for, the largest amount of people. Um, and go for that rather than, and I've seen this in Epicurus. Epicurus said that it's not always a bad thing to endure some pain to get a higher level pleasure, or to reject some lower level pleasures to get to a higher level pleasure. So, you know, Epicurus kind of lines up with Mill in that regard. So I would have to say that, first of all, there are various levels of pleasure. Um, there are various different kinds of pleasures. There is happiness and there's contentment. Happiness is that highest level of being, happy, and contentment is, a lower level of a agreeable disposition. And Mill famously said, "It is better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a pig satisfied," and that relates a lot to the person, a morality of the person to not be a pig, basically, to not, indulge in all these various little pleasures that, um, any, that is just, um, what's what I'm looking for? They're just, you know, they are, low, and they really don't really matter. They're just, little pleasures, and so it's better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. And thus we can have, like, um, eating lots of food, drinking lots of beer and liquor are lower level pleasures, and things like graduating from college and high school and graduate school are higher level ones, because they're, accomplishments. Um, you know, Landing a job or a career or publishing a book. There's, or painting a piece of art that's just, beautiful and gets sold for lots of money. Um, there are various levels, and there's they differ as to the feelings as well. So I would definitely have to say that there's a difference, that there are qualitative and quantitative, and that there are qualitative pleasures are great, are different based on what they are, as to what the feeling is. Okay, so that is pretty much what it is. That is the gist of utilitarianism. I highly recommend reading Mill's Utilitarianism. If you want to read Bentham's Principles of Morals and Legislation, that's not as vibrant of a read, I would say, but it's still worth reading a bit. So, I guess my question for a utilitarian would have to be, I guess I don't really see any kind of self-cultivation or a flourishing within the self. I guess when I look to a moral code, I would say I would have to think of it in terms of the person, and as to how the self is flourishing and cultivated. And I don't think that morality should at all be based on pleasure. And there is, a metaphysical argument against consequentialist theories as to, you really don't know what you're doing metaphysically. You don't know what you're affecting, or what things are being done metaphysically when you act based on pleasure of any number of people. But either way, this is definitely something that is important, and the greatest happiness principle is probably one of the most led moral codes. It's a kind of a pleasure-seeking thing, and that sounds bad, but it's, it is definitely higher than what Bentham would say, or it's definitely higher than, there's pleasures that are sought after that are a little, different, that would kind of make it not seem so horrible as it is, or not make utilitarianism seem as horrible as it is. I mean, it's not, but it makes it sound horrible if it's a pleasure-seeking thing. But the way Mill states it, it's not so much like that. It's after, accomplishments and goals and the pleasures associated with that. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to go a little review on what Mill and Bentham say. That's very vague, and it's very, brief. And then I would like to also go into it in a different video on his political philosophy.